The dust was thick in his mouth. Every breath burned like fire. Every inch forward tore at his body. His legs were shattered, useless beneath him, but Captain Elias dragged himself across the jagged earth anyway. 200 meters of broken ground, blood marking his trail. His hands trembled, his vision blurred, but his mind clung to a single thought. If he didn't reach that radio, 40 men would die within the hour. Before I tell you what happened next, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love knowing who's listening. The battlefield around him was silent, unnervingly so. Not the silence of peace, but the silence of predators waiting. He could almost feel the eyes of the enemy on him. Hidden beyond the ridge, his comrades were pinned down, their ammunition running low. Some whispered prayers. Others clenched their rifles with the grim knowledge that it might be the last time. Elias heard none of it. He only heard his heartbeat like a war drum inside his chest, demanding that he keep moving. Pain stabbed through his ribs with every drag. He thought of his family, of the letter in his pocket he hadn't yet mailed home. He thought of the young recruit who had laughed at breakfast that morning, still believing he was invincible. And he thought of his duty, a word that weighed more than bone, heavier than flesh. The radio sat inside the wreckage of a transport vehicle, just 200 meters ahead. To anyone else, it might as well have been a mile. To Elias, it was salvation itself. But with each pull of his arms, the ground seemed to stretch farther, mocking him. Sweat ran into his eyes. His fingers slipped against rock and dirt slick with his own blood. He nearly gave up. For one breath, one terrible moment, he considered letting go, to close his eyes and let the darkness take him. But then a sound pierced the stillness, the faint cry of a soldier calling his name. It was a reminder. They were counting on him. He clenched his jaw, dragged himself forward again. Inch by inch. Every muscle screamed, but his spirit refused to break. His brothers in arms were more than men. They were voices in his head, urging him on. They were the reason he would not stop. When he finally reached the twisted steel of the vehicle, his arms collapsed beneath him. He clawed at the metal, hauling his broken body inside. His hands shook as he reached for the radio. For a moment it seemed impossibly heavy, almost cruel in its weight. But Elias pressed the receiver to his lips and called the strike. His voice cracked, barely more than a whisper, but it carried the power of a roar. The seconds after felt eternal. He lay there drenched in sweat and blood, listening. Then the sky answered. The thunder of aircraft split the silence, a tide of fire raining down on the enemy positions. The ground trembled. His pinned comrades erupted in shouts, in cries of disbelief and relief. They rose like men reborn, rallying behind the miracle their captain had delivered. In the smoke and echoes, soldiers found Elias slumped against the wreckage, his hands still clutching the radio. They carried him with reverence, their voices hushed, their faces wet with tears. They knew 40 lives had been saved by one man's impossible crawl. Later, some argued whether it was right, whether one man should destroy himself for the sake of others. But in the hearts of those who lived that day, there was no doubt. Sacrifice was not tragedy. It was courage made flesh, because courage doesn't vanish. It endures. And it saves. And long after the battlefield fell silent, the trail Elias carved into the dirt remained, like a scar upon the earth, reminding every man who saw it that true strength is not found in standing tall, but in refusing to stop moving forward when everything else is broken. If this story moved you, take a moment to leave your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more stories of sacrifice, courage, and the human spirit. Your support helps keep these voices alive.